last for the record.
Dr. Logan Bashir, B-A-S-H-I-R.
What do you do for a living, Dr. Bashir?
Well, I've taught as the professor of law at the University of Arizona for about 20 years. And around the same time I began teaching, I founded Bashir Strategies, which is my consulting firm.
Before we get into Bashir Strategies, could you tell us a little bit about your educational background?
Certainly. I have a bachelor's and master's in psychology from the University of Oklahoma. I have my JD from the University of Colorado, and I also have a PhD from Stanford with a focus in child psychology.
Now, what exactly do you do at Bashir Strategies, your consulting firm?
Well, Bashir Strategies helps to support juveniles and their families in the criminal justice system, and we try to direct these youths away from a life of criminal behavior through rehabilitation, as opposed to simply finding them or incarcerating them.
And have you testified in court before in this capacity for your firm?
Yes, I've been retained as an expert consultant and a witness in 65 cases, and I've testified in 6 of these.
And why are you testifying in court today?
Well, I was hired by Hayden Duran's attorney to use my knowledge and expertise to analyze a certain written statement produced by Jesse Duran on August 18, 2010.
Did you have sufficient facts and data to proceed with this consultation?
Yes, I reviewed the written statement, of course, and I also reviewed the affidavit of Hayden Duran, the report of Officer Dale Williams, as well as a floor plan of the Parks home.
Dr. Bashir, is your testimony today a product of reliable principles and methods?
Yes, it is. My research methods, especially in the area of false confessions, are widely employed in the criminal justice system.
And did you reliably apply those principles and methods you just mentioned to the facts of today's case?
Yes, I did. Jesse's written statement is particularly relevant to the concept of juveniles in the justice system and also false confessions themselves.
What research in particular did you find that applied to Jesse Duran's circumstances?
Well, false confessions have been a long-standing problem in the justice system, and consequently there's been a great deal of research done into the causes and factors and motives associated with these.
You mentioned a statement made by Jesse Duran. Was this research related to that statement in particular?
Yes, there were several factors surrounding the production of Jesse's statement that point to it possibly being a voluntary false confession.
Would you recognize that statement if I showed it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Let the record reflect that approaching opposing counsel with what has been marked as Plaintiff Exhibit 1 for identification purposes only. May I approach the witness? What have I just handed you, Dr. Bashir?
This is a copy of the written statement produced by Jesse Duran on August 18th.
And is this a fair and accurate copy as you reviewed during your consultation made by Jesse Duran?
Yes, it appears to be so.
Plaintiff moves Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objections?
Pursuant to Rule 703, Your Honor, there are no objections.
I saw it too.
Now, in your professional opinion, Dr. Bashir, could you describe the circumstances surrounding the making of this statement?
Yes. Well, Jesse Duran, to begin with, is a minor, which is a rather susceptible age at 11 years old. And at the time of this production, the production of this statement, Jesse was, I hate to use the term isolated, but sequestered in a room alone with 2 police officers.
Now, you mentioned earlier something about a voluntary false confession, but could you just explain to us what exactly that means?
Yes, there are 3 primary types of false confessions, but the one most applicable to this case is the voluntary false confession. Essentially, it requires little to no police pressure to extract.
Dr. Bashir, why do you think that the statement made by Jesse Duran would be considered a voluntary false confession?
Well, in the factors surrounding the production of this statement, the circumstances were a little suspicious, and Jessie wrote in her statement, and I quote, "That's why I came over today, and why I made Sydney tell me the combination to the safe after Andy had left. Sydney didn't want to, but I told her it would be fine." Common intent in a voluntary false confession is to direct the blame away from another person. This shows a direct desire on Jesse's part to divert the blame from Sydney.
Was there anything else that you found during this consultation to suggest that this statement would fall into that category?
Yes, I reviewed the report of Officer Dale Williams in forming my conclusions, and there were several red flags. When Jesse was accounted for within the house, Officer Williams describes placing her alone in a room with 2 police officers. Again, I will remind you that Jesse is very young, and these police officers could have had some kind of influence. There is also an issue that Jesse's parent or guardian was not present, and all of this supports the theory that a voluntary false confession was persuaded out of Jesse Duran.
Thank you. Permission to approach the witness and publish to the jury?
Amen.
With that, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross.
First sample for the plaintiff. May I inquire?
May proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Bashir. Now, excuse me?
My name is Dr. Bashir. I have a PhD.
My apologies. Dr. Bashir. You would agree with me that most signs accompanying a false confession are not present in today's case.
Yes, that's true, but there are certainly many factors that were, including Jesse's age, the absence of a parent or guardian, being alone in a room with 2 officers, and also the statement was produced after I had a traumatic event.
I thank you for that answer, Dr. Bashir. But you would agree with me that most of the signs that are accompanied with a false confession are not present in today's case.
No, not all of them are.
There was no lengthy interrogation from the police.
No, there was not.
You found no evidence that suggested that police forced Jesse to make this statement?
Well, there is no concrete evidence either way that the police influenced Jesse.
Again, you found no evidence that stated that police forced Jesse to make the statement.
No, there is no evidence to support that.
You mentioned earlier that juveniles will be more susceptible to making a false confession.
Absolutely, which is why Jesse's presence along with 2 officers at such a young age is so concerning.
Ms. Bashir, Dr. Bashir, I understand you like to explain your answers, but I'm really asking whether or not you were aware about what you testified a second ago. If you need to explain your answers, your counsel will come back on the redirect and allow you to explain them, okay? Now, you found no evidence that suggested that Jesse Duran was a juvenile. That's true, right?
Jesse Duran was 11 years old at the time and therefore was classified as a juvenile.
Jesse Duran, at the time that you did your work, was not a juvenile.
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered. My witness just stated that Jesse was, in fact, considered a juvenile.
I'll give him some leeway as cross-examination.
You found no evidence that stated that Jesse Duran was a juvenile at the time of his confession.
Jesse was 11 years old at the time, which is classified as a minor.
Dr. Bashir, maybe my question is not clear. Do you believe that Jesse Duran was, in fact, a juvenile at the time of the confession?
Yes, I do. A juvenile is a person under the age of 18.
Dr. Bashir, you also found that there was no mental disabilities that Jesse Duran suffered, isn't that right?
That's correct.
There was no cognitive limitations involved with Jesse Duran?
That is also correct.
You would agree with me in telling the members of the jury that you cannot say with any degree of certainty that the statement was in fact a false confession.
Well, yes. False confessions, as with any social science, are by nature imprecise. There's rarely any.
Dr. Bashir, I'm sorry. Well, my question was,
Point of order, Your Honor. I asked that opposing counsel allow my witness to finish answering this question before he cuts her off.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yeah.
I'm asking the witness what they would say. Would they agree with the statement? And this witness, on multiple occasions, has tried to explain her answers, and I've told her that she would have the ability to explain her answers on a regular. I'm really attempting to control this witness.
You can't cut the witness off. If you need to control, ask tighter questions, or bring her back to your question. So I'll sustain the objection. You can't cut her off or finish your statement.
You would agree that you cannot confirm that this statement was in fact a false confession.
Well, as I was saying, false confessions are a social science, which as a field are by nature imprecise. There's only finer and finer degrees of accuracy, and rarely absolute concrete conclusions.
You can't tell us if it's 50% certain?
I was hired to provide the best opinion that I can, and that is what I've been hired to do, and it is my assertion that Jesse Duran did produce a voluntary false confession.
But you cannot confirm this with any degree of certainty. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Well, that's because, well, you weren't there on August 18th at the Parks' home, were you?
No, it was not.
You have no training in CSI.
No, I do not.
The only evidence that you had that allowed you to put yourself in that situation was the account of Officer Dale Williams, right?
Yes, as well as the written statement by Jesse and the affidavit of Hayden Duran.
Now, I want to talk about what you do know. When Dale Williams walked inside the house, he placed Jesse in a chair between two officers, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, you found no evidence that stated that the officers were looking threatening to Jesse?
No, there's no evidence to support that.
You have no evidence that says that the officers were talking harshly to Jesse?
As I stated before, no concrete evidence either way.
Now, when Officer Williams later returned to Jesse, Jesse had by this time finished writing the statement.
Yes, that's true.
The officers informed Mr. Williams that Jesse simply grabbed a piece of paper and began writing on her own.
Hearsay?
Response?
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 703, hearsay can be omitted in because even though it's admissible, as long as it's relating to the expert's conclusion. Now, earlier I stated that I had no objection pursuant to Rule 703 because that was hearsay on behalf of the defendant.
May I respond?
Yeah.
Pursuant to case law in Mississippi v. Barbecue, it states that an expert cannot be used as a conduit to hearsay, which is exactly what opposing counsel was attempting to do through Dr. Bashir. The officer's statement to Officer Williams is not something that she used. She didn't have that statement. She didn't speak with those officers during her consultation. To bring this statement in through Dr. Bashir is merely trying to put hearsay on the record that should not be admissible.
May I respond to that, Your Honor?
Yes.
Case law Richards v. Mississippi Barbecue states exactly what she said. I cannot bring out hearsay unless I relate it to the expertise of the expert. This witness has reviewed the account of Dale Williams as she just stated a moment ago. And because of this, and she applied it to her own expertise in coming to the conclusion that she just told the members of the jury.
Wait, I got lost a little bit. So how is she applying this statement to her knowledge? How'd you say? I missed that in your explanation.
Your Honor, this witness reviewed the account of Officer Dale Williams. That account is in its nature hearsay.
Right.
This expert has testified about the account of Dale Williams on direct examination because she related to her personal expertise of false confessions. That is what I'm really doing now. She testified on direct examination, and I'm clarifying specific details so the members of the jury can get the entire context of what occurred in that household.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Bashir, looking at the account of Dale Williams, when he returned to Jesse, that confession was done, right?
Yes, that's true.
He was informed that Jesse simply, on her own, picked up a sheet of paper and began writing without saying a word to anybody.
That is what is stated in the report.
Now, you just told us a little while ago how you have your own company called Bashir Strategies, isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Founded in 1994.
Yes,
You've been in business for 20 years.
yes,
You've personally handled 65 cases.
yes, I have.
Doctor, I'm looking for a number. Out of all those 65 cases over the past 20 years, what's the number? How many times have you testified on behalf of the plaintiff?
I have not testified on behalf of the plaintiff before, but I have testified 6 times on behalf of the defendant.
So the answer to my question is 0.
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor, I just asked that my witness may be allowed to step down.